Hello students, welcome to my channel. Today we shall discuss the essay Heresy of Paraphrase written by CLEANTH. Before we begin with the essay, we should know which school of thought that CLEANTH belongs to. So CLEANTH, who was born in 1906 and died in 1994, is widely known as an American literary critic and a professor. And he is considered to be one of the central figures of what we know as New Criticism. This very movement called New Criticism was supported by a group of writers who were writing in the first half of the 20th century. And some of the prominent figures of this movement were I.A. Richards, William Empson, T.S. Eliot, and John Crowe Ransom. And here what is important to remember is that the advocates of this New Criticism, they always lay emphasis on what they call close reading of a text. And if you talk about this particular essay, Heresy of Paraphrase, so that is one of the chapters in Brooks' book, The Well Wrote On Studies in the Structure of Poetry, which was published in 1947. This essay called Heresy of Paraphrase, it seems to be a kind of a guideline, not for only the readers who read for the entertainment purpose, but it is equally a guideline for the critics who read in an attempt to establish something out of their readings. And this essay discusses a variety of subjects such as the result of paraphrase. What could happen when someone attempts to paraphrase the literary piece? And the essay also talks about the language of poetry and the language of prose and different aspects of imagery, the structure of poetry, and how to achieve the core meaning of the poetry. So Brooks begins the essay saying that how a poem consists of various elements or aspects such as metaphors, irony, paradox, and other literary devices. And they all form the part of the content. And if one is to read a poem with the intention of doing some justice to it, one needs to consider it as a whole pattern. It should be read with all its entirety. But here the question arises, which pattern? So Brooks answers, the pattern which can incorporate within itself items intrinsically beautiful or ugly, attractive or repulsive. And Brooks further says, I quote, we must draw a sharp distinction between the attractiveness or beauty of any particular item taken as such and the beauty of the poem considered as a whole. So here the entirety of all the details, all the devices, the aspects, elements employed in the poem is focused on. And as per Brooks, in poetry, content and form, they all go hand in hand. One cannot separate the content and make a study of it in vacuum. You have to consider the form as well. Form is very important. In any case, the content is taken under study, the reading will never be adequate and justified. So, form is where the beauty of the poem lies. Form must be beheld along in order to analyze the poem as a whole, as an entire piece. One has to remember that poetry is not a scientific proposition. It has a working of its own. It's fashioned in its own way. It has a structure of its own understanding and analysis of which further determines its beauty and value as a work of art. It may be good or bad, different or common as compared to other literary corpus. That will always be based on the study of it as a whole and not in bits and pieces.